for January 10, 2025. Keep up to date with the important happenings in the Go community in about 15 minutes per week. I'm Jonathan Hall.
And I'm Shai Ahmad.
Hi, Shai. I heard I should be conversational and we should talk more on this show.
That's good. That's a non-awkward way to do that. How's the weather?
It's kind of cold here.
We have to talk about Go because, dear listener, I have a confession to make. I spent this week doing backend with TypeScript.
Traitor.
Yeah. Jonathan, save me. Let's talk about Go a little bit.
Well, if we're doing confessions, I guess I'll tell you that I've been doing a lot of front end with JavaScript lately too.
That sounds all right. That sounds like an okay choice.
Yeah. Well, it's not fun.
No, it's not. Wait, TypeScript or JavaScript?
Just JavaScript, no TypeScript.
Oof. Damn.
In this show, we're going to be talking about a security update that's coming out soon, a bunch of conferences that you could be speaking at, some releases, and a few other things. I don't know, 124. I think those are the highlights.
Yeah, we have also cool blog posts that we wanted to share, a new project that's coming out. It's a little bit of everything. And then we're going to bike shed after the ad break about how to write tests. Because who doesn't like to argue about that?
Oh, just skip tests. That's the easy way.
Mm-hmm. No tests, no failed tests, no failures in CI.
That's right.
That's great.
Your CI can't fail if you don't have any tests.
Yeah, the CrowdStrike way. Just ship it. I think that's the second episode in a row where I'm shitting on CrowdStrike, but it's just I apologize, CrowdStrike people. You're doing okay. Security fixes. So there is a plan to issue a security fix on Monday, January 13th. Which covers a specific CVE. There's a pre-announcement, so you don't have to upgrade yet. Just remember to upgrade on January 13th.
So how many of our listeners do you think this security patch is likely to affect?
So that's actually an interesting question because the security patch impacts a specific path of code that may or may not be executed by your own code. And this sort of reachability analysis, if you go really deep into the weeds, it's kind of hard, right? Because even if I import this package, I don't necessarily call the function that has the vulnerability. And even if I call it, maybe I don't call it in the right context or with the right parameters in a way that might trigger the vulnerability. So how many people does this actually affect? Probably a very small number. However, this package is imported by 100,000 other packages,
Wow.
according to pkg.go.dev.
That's a lot more than I would have expected, actually.
Yeah, it's only presenting the top 20K, so I'm not even seeing like whether Google themselves imported somewhere, but it definitely seems like it's part of Kubernetes because it's part of someone's fork of Kubernetes, and I can't really see them changing all the log to glog in their fork. That's probably not what they did. But yeah, it's happening through a lot of other tools. So protobuf, gateways, SQL exporters. So it seems like people are not really even importing it themselves. It's just part of very basic things like kubelet and just code they vendored or copied or forked, right? It's part of VTest by PlanetScale. Like it's in a lot of things. So it's probably affecting a lot of people, which is interesting because I knew it, but I if you told me, hey, what's glog, I can tell you off the top of my mind. It's not like something I use. I just saw it when I learned C++. So make sure to upgrade on Monday, but it's probably in one of your dependencies. So maybe you want to lock your version of glog to be higher, which is annoying. But yeah, maybe you should do that. Definitely the fine grain control over logging in the fine level and evaluating arguments and things like that. Something that does matter at scale. But if your project is not at scale but imports a library or a tool or uses something that was built to deal with scale, suddenly you deal with all these. You're just building an HTTP server that serves 10 users a day, but you have to upgrade dependencies that have C++ optimizations. It's actually written in pure Go, right? But the original concept was in C++ for huge scale. So yeah, upgrade on Monday. Put it on your calendar. A nice way to start the week. And a cool package. And the announcement's going to come obviously on Monday, right? So we're not going to probably have the details of the fix until then. because it's a private issue. But actually, there is a change log. It's just like Go internal review. Like when I click on it, it brings me to a login page, single sign on in Google. So I assume I can't go there. Like I assume I can't see. It's all like internal Go links. So I guess we'll have to wait until you can just wait until the next show, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. We'll tell you what actually happened.
I'm adding a thing to our backlog so we don't forget. What about some conferences?
Yeah, let's talk about conferences. We haven't been following this as closely as we used to, largely because the wiki page for the conferences is no longer a wiki page, and it's really hard to get it updated. So we have to kind of scrape our conference info from other places. But we got a few for you. The next one coming up is going to be in Brazil, Florianopolis. That's May 5 and 6, GopherCon LATAM. It looks like they're doing talks in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So that covers a pretty big portion of the developer community that speaks one of those three languages. So there's no excuse not to go to Brazil. I'll see you there. Coming up next, we have GopherCon Europe. This will be in Berlin again. This will be June 16 through 19. And the CFP is still open, so you have a chance to present there as well. CFP closes...
CFP stands for Call for Papers, which is funny because these are not papers anymore.
Yeah, they're not.
I don't think they've ever been. But I guess
it's a call for presentation. So actually it says call for speakers, but
CFSs.
That makes more sense. Anyway, CFS for GopherCon Berlin is open until February 23rd. So you still have a little over a month and a half to propose a talk in Berlin.
Yeah, if you're based in Europe, though, don't wait until the last minute because if your talk gets usually what happens is all the talk reviews happen towards the end of the call for papers. But sometimes they can, if you know someone on the review board, or you can just send them an email and be like, hey, I sent my thing early. Can you review it and let me know if it's good or not? And maybe I'll send another one if it's not good. That just gives you an extra chance if your talk is not a good fit for that conference. Because, maybe the talk is great, but someone is already registered for a similar talk or something like that. That could give you an extra chance. That worked for me once in one of our Go meetups.
And the last one, far out in the future, this is all the way in August, 13th to 15th, GopherCon UK will be back in London. The CFP/CFS is not yet open. It opens on March 1st. So we'll talk about that again in a few months to remind you.
Yeah, it is call for papers, though. When you open the CFP page, it says the title in bold, call for papers.
Yes.
And they just have a cool thing of sort of directing you towards which talks they're aiming towards.
Yeah.
They have keynotes, which are 30 minutes, talk sessions, which are 60 minutes, and tutorials, which are 120 minutes.
I think I'll do the keynote. That sounds easier.
Only 4 keynote sessions will be selected, and 24 talk sessions will be selected. And finally, tutorials, which are more classroom style. So, whatever is more your type, you could take. I've definitely seen people in conferences where it's only 60-minute presentations. People try to do a tutorial in a presentation. And even if the tutorial is great, people are they don't have their laptops ready. It's not really their mindset. Or the other way around. It's like a classroom and just someone's giving a presentation. So it's cool that they, have this separation already ahead of time. And it seems like a big conference from the picture here. It looks like a ton of people.
I think that is one of the bigger ones. I haven't been to it, but just based on people I've spoken to who have been there.
Yeah, I guess there are a lot of gophers in the UK. That would make sense. Cool. Talking about Google and security, I have a Hacker News thread, which I found. I don't know. Do you use Hacker News as a social media?
Occasionally. I'm not a regular visitor, but I occasionally browse or...
So I never go visit the website, but I have a Telegram feed that feeds me just the titles. And then I judge the book by its cover and choose which threads to go into. And this one was interesting. Go Safe Web. I was like, ooh, what's this? It's a pretty cool project from Google. Again, we're really hyping up Google stuff this episode.
Although the first line of the README says,
out, right?
Disclaimer,
it's a language by Google. That's fair.
The first line of the README, however, says, disclaimer, this is not an officially supported Google product. So it's done by Google, but I guess you can't sue them if it breaks or get support or whatever.
So let me ask you something. Google Plus, was that an officially supported Google product? How about
I believe
Google
it was.
Podcasts? How about all the rest of the killed by Google, site? Do you know that thing, Google Graveyard?
Yeah.
I fucking love that. Jamboard, Chromecast, Robcam, Keen, optimized podcast domains. Do you remember they shut down domains in 2023? That was insane.
I'm actually surprised that Chromecast is in that list. I thought that was still going on, but I guess
no.
just out of date.
Died 5 months ago. After 11 years. And YouTube Stories, and if you go back, Stadia was a heartbreaker for me. Man, I really thought cloud gaming was going to be a thing. And if you go really way back, you find a lot of things.
You remember when Google used to do search? Anyway, what's SafeWeb?
Yeah, let's stay focused. It's a non-official Google product, so it's probably going to live longer than the official ones. I guess that's what that means. But what is this project, and why would you care? So, Jonathan, let's say you're at work and you're working on something that has sensitive data and it's an HTTP server.
Yeah.
What do you need to do?
Well, I want to make sure there's some authentication in middleware, probably. I want to make sure I'm using HTTPS.
So you're like scratching your brain right now, trying to like dig up, open the folder called security, clear out all the cobwebs, right? Because usually you have smarter people like Filippo and whatever taking care of that stuff for you, trying to remember that list. So Go SafeWeb is just a collection of libraries for writing secure by default HTTP servers. So you don't have to remember to protect yourself from all these things. So just all the security mechanisms are applied by default. They're opt out versus opt in. And if you have to do unsafe usage, it's like very clear. It's very much an exception. And enforcing new security measures will be able as well through AST, like your manipulation. So you could actually change the code after you release it, and existing users will just have either static analysis or runtime monitoring to migrate in the future as well, right? When new vulnerabilities and new attack patterns are detected. I think that's like the killer feature, other than the fact it's a collection of good current best practices or secure practices, I should say. They claim to be able to do sort of like future proofing towards future security requirements. I'm not 100% like convinced by their example, but it's a good goal to aspire to, right? Some security vulnerabilities they plan to address or mitigate is XSS, XSRF, CORS, TLS, iframing, authentication and access control, parsing bugs with HTTP. If you remember, we had someone on the show, I forgot his name, found a bug with like flooding HTTP 100.
Yeah.
Right. So like sort of avoiding these things, uniform error handling to make sure you don't accidentally leak data over error messages, and enforcing a ton of HTTP security headers that you just have to include and do correctly with like an interceptor that forces you the content type options and the XSS protection and things like that. Just things you if you remember to do or your framework does for you, that's great. But if you don't, you're less secure as a server. So a big list of really cool things. I like the approach. I like the idea. It's still early, so like I won't build production things on it, but definitely like looking at that list and making sure your company/server applied everything here.
When you say it's early, what do you mean?
They just claim it's this project is an early stage and they are not accepting any contributions. So I think it's just like an internal Google thing. I noticed
it's the Go mod references Go 1.16. There's at least commits 5 years old. So
yeah, I don't. The fact that it's old doesn't mean it's like it's not an early stage. I don't think it's like a top priority thing for Google. They just released it as an idea, I think. And when it came out on Hacker News, I'm not sure why someone posted it, like what was new. Maybe they're working in like a different fork or something. There was a lot of interesting discussion here. And the main one was when you do all these things at the application level, that's kind of weird, right? Because you almost never have your HTTP server just bare on the web, right? Like the first thing you would actually do in this scenario I asked you is probably set up the thing on the cloud somewhere, right?
Yeah, set up a load balancer or something to handle a lot of your stuff, right?
Yeah, and the SSL certificates, you get them from your cloud provider or whatever. So I almost never had to do SSL in Go, right? Because I had Nginx or ALB or whatever wrapping the thing for me. And then internally in my network, it was all HTTP. And even when you have MTLS between services and you have to do it, you don't like do cross or like origin things between your internal services or internal tooling and things like that. But if you do zero trust approach, super high level things, maybe you can take a look at this project. I think it's a really good like stepping stone, and I'm wondering if someone would pick it up in the future. But definitely, it does seem abandoned, right? It's a large project and it's dead, right?
Yeah, I mean, the last update was 3 weeks ago, and it was just to update some dependencies, I guess, for some security vulnerabilities.
Actually, opening the issues, the top issue is state on the README that this project is substantially unmaintained, and it seems like it's an ex-Googler, or no, currently security engineer at Google from Milano, at least according to their GitHub profile, that says, this project is large. I think it would need more work than what's currently been done to define it as a live project. I think it's safe to say it's dead. The reason being, the only application that adopted this framework internally was written by me and has since gone in maintenance mode.
I love the open draft pull request called, I think we're getting somewhere with generics.
So it's an interesting concept, but it's a good thing that this person, Roberto Clapes, has stated that this is actually abandoned. So it's an interesting concept. If you have a security aware thing at your company, maybe take a look, but I wouldn't build on top of it. I would just take the concepts, because each individual concept is not that hard to implement, other than the promise of like future-proof, this framework will forever and ever protect us from every single security vulnerability. I don't think that's really possible, even with static analysis and runtime monitoring and blah, blah, blah. Evolving security requirements, they always evolve just to be better than the attackers, right? And then the attackers have to evolve. That's how it always has been. So I think it's a cool case study. Cool. Let's talk about a project that actually has been released and actually is useful.
One that's clearly not abandoned. So this is GoReleaser. We talked about it on the show before. They're always adding new features. GoReleaser 2.5 was released just before Christmas. And the interesting thing about this is it's no longer named properly, I guess. They added experimental support for Rust and Zig. So now it's like Go Rust Zig Releaser.
Multi-language support for GoReleaser. That's super cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. The other thing I want to mention, upcoming, I saw that just last night, GoReleaser 2.6 Nightly was released. And it has a bunch of cool features that even if you are like hardcore, I only ever do Go for whatever reason, you might appreciate this. It has capabilities, or will, once it's released, potentially in the next day or two, to automatically, I guess, announce your releases on Blue Sky, on Discord, LinkedIn, Mastodon, Mattermost, and a whole bunch of other social media websites, and Slack and things like that. So I think that's pretty cool. If you want to set up integrations so that every release just automatically gets spammed out to your network, why not?
Honestly, almost every GoReleaser thing I've done had integration with Slack just as part of GitHub Actions, right?
Sure,
Once it's released and pushed, something lets Slack know, right? So CSs or other people who depend on the thing that was released, they can go out to their customers and say, hey, blah, 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 new release, check out. So the fact that it's built into GoReleaser, I really love how it's slowly trying to, every release is eating one more piece of the like continuous deployment puzzle. Until like eventually you're just going to have to go run GoReleaser, no parameters. It's going to take care of your entire CD for you. We just need to wait for that guy to implement his own like a GitHub Actions runner, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, it would be good. GoReleaser is great, man. Super tight, always works fast, simple configuration. I'm all for GoReleaser. At my previous company, we used GoReleaser Pro. That was really good.
Yeah, cool.
That's enough long form news. We know the current generation is all hyped up because of YouTube Shorts and TikTok, and you don't have attention spans anymore. So let's move to that lightning round to feed you some of that good dopamine you like. Lightning round. My thing for the lightning round is a really good blog post about how
good is it?
Really good. You know what? That's a pretty good question. How about you read it and I read it, and then we compare our results about how much we liked it. Wait a second. You're asking, how will we compare these results? Maybe we can benchmark them and then compare them with BenchStat. Well, if you read these blog posts, you know how to do that. It's Bartek. I think we talked about Bartek's blog posts in the past. He's the author of, or something he did. I just remember that name. He's the author of Efficient Go, which is an O'Reilly book about writing Efficient Go, obviously. And it's a really simple blog post asking, how do you compare benchmarks? So the old way was you run a benchmark, then you optimize your code, then you run a benchmark again, and then you compare the two benchmarks using the BenchStat tool. And this is already valuable. Like if you didn't know how to compare two benchmarks, this is the way to do it. The benchmark tool gives you a lot of like visibility and options about like how things have been improved between two different runs, right? Of the same benchmark. And you can see like seconds per operation and the differences between the old and the new, and how much the performance has increased or decreased for like specific subcases of your benchmark. However, that does entail running it twice and saving it to do different files. You know, you have to repeat all these steps basically. And in the new case that Bartek presents here, you know, there's a new flow where you can compare efficiency across specific cases in a more complicated benchmark with like based on the row of one file. So you don't have to run it like twice with two different flags or something. You just run your test once. You have to add some boilerplate to your test, but if you have something that's very benchmark-ish specific, that could be really useful. I don't know, what's the last benchmark you wrote?
Oh, wow. It's been a while.
Did it have like, did you just write it to make sure that you're not going over some threshold, or did you actually try to optimize the thing?
Usually I do benchmarks when I'm comparing two different implementations of something to decide which one to
so that would be perfect for that. You just need to add to your row, to your like your benchmark test, a row that says, oh, case 1, case 2. Bartek has an example here. It's all verbose. Like it looks a little ugly, I won't lie. But it's like 4 case in case, and then 4 like, you know, method 1, method 2, run the benchmark. And then you just run BenchStat on it with minus row instead of minus new and old. And you get the table comparison after one test, which is really useful. Yep. I love these benchmark tables. Like he's comparing protobuf, Prometheus write requests. I love that people nerd out on these details, so I don't have to, and Prometheus just ends up being fast. So a cool blog post. Go read it if you're doing benchmarks. What do you have?
I don't remember. Okay, I do remember. So I have 2 quick picks for the lightning round. They're basically just resources that you could use to get more Go news or happenings in the Go community, if you will. First one's called Golang Nugget. It's a little blog that does, I think, weekly-ish nuggets of Go goodness with little AI-generated gophers. So who doesn't love that? Check out golangnugget.com. And the other one, we've talked about it on the show before. It's Golang Weekly. I'm subscribed to this. It's a newsletter that I think it's put out by Arden Labs. They send you a weekly snippet of Go news. Sometimes I mention this podcast, so it's time for us to mention them again.
So what's the difference between Golang Weekly and Golang Applied Weekly? Is Golang Weekly like unapplied?
Yeah. This is purely sort of hypothetical, abstract. If you want to apply your Go knowledge, then Golang Applied Weekly is also great.
I love that there's enough Go news for like a podcast and like 5 newsletters. Everybody with their style and take. It's actually a good thing. But we hope, this show gives you like a specific take. And obviously worth mentioning Golang Applied Weekly as well, which is maintained by our friend Christoph, which was on the show a long time ago. I wonder if we pull up that episode, how old Filippo's going to make it sound in the edit.
I just got a copy of the Applied Go weekly newsletter, and it has some really great articles in it. Have you seen this newsletter?
Of course, I follow it. I really like recently it's gone into AI and stuff. I'm wondering who's writing it. Oh, wait.
Yeah, I don't know. We should find out, because he shared one of my videos, and so he's got a
good page.
great guy.
He's got a good page.
So, yes. Oh, hi, Christoph. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Hey, what's up?
And that does it for the lightning round. Let's do a quick ad break before we jump into a bike shedding discussion about Go tests.
I can't wait.
Welcome to our ad break. This podcast is sponsored by Blockbuster.
I don't know how to say to that.
I thought it was sponsored by things that were, really cool in the 90s.
Okay.
Oh, no, those are our listeners. Never mind. This show is sponsored by our listeners. Actually, I'm wondering what's the average age of the listener to the podcast. I might be totally off, and most people who listen are like 18 or something.
Good question. I don't know. I would imagine older than 18, but probably younger than me. I'm 45.
Don't let me phrase this in a wrong way, but it's easier to I think the average is to be younger than you.
Yeah, I think so. I would expect the average to be. I would expect late 20s as an average, probably. But I don't know.
Actually, I love the fact that podcasts don't have great analytics, because I would start obsessing over them. But just getting a slice of all the people who listen to the show would be cool.
Speaking of analytics, I can hop over to YouTube and see who watches us on YouTube at least.
Ooh, that would be cool. Why don't you do that while I'll tell the nice listeners about how we are actually sponsored? Because we're not sponsored by Blockbuster. We're not sponsored by anyone. This show is self-supported with the beautiful Patreon members. If you want to join and kick a few bucks a month our way, that would be cool. We're not making any money off the show. Trust us. We do have to pay for hosting fees and editing fees just to make this show sound nice and be transmitted all over the world. So that helps cover that. While mentioning Patreon, thanks to our new member, Jose DS, for joining Patreon. Thank you. And obviously all the old Patreons as well. You're just so cool. You're already part of the thing. I don't have to mention your name. For that link and many others, go to cupago.dev, where you can find links to our Slack channel. It's on the Gopher Slack, so if you're already there, you can just look up Cupago. And if you're not into all that, you can email us at news@cupago.dev. That is news@cupago.dev. I always say you can email us. That address actually just goes to Jonathan.
Yeah, but that goes to me.
But he lets me know when things go through. Yeah. You can also find links in the site to past episodes with all the transcripts, all our social media links, less than GoReleaser offers, but they are there. I don't think we have Blue Sky, Mastodon, all that.
We have Mastodon.
Do we? I'm not on Mastodon, so I wouldn't know.
We have LinkedIn. We had Twitter, but I closed my Twitter account, and that likely closed our Cupago account too. I'm not sure.
I think it's still kicking. We need to ask Elon, I guess.
Yeah.
And, we need to make sure that our episode have right-wing enough titles so the algorithm picks them up. That would be a fun experiment. Maybe we can release an episode just named Jordan Peterson, Alex Jones. What are their contributions to the Go language? Also, what happens when you put the January 6th date into the Golang date formatter? That's probably going to get picked up. Or alienate or left-wing listeners. Anyway,
some of our listeners have just sworn us off now. I don't know which direction they're leaning politically, but they're no longer listening.
For sure.
All right.
Also, if you want to support us and you don't want to support us financially, that's totally fine. You can leave a review or share this show. Spreading the word about the show is the only way it gets around. We don't pay for advertising. So leaving a review on the whatever app you're using to listen to this, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, or just sharing the show in your jobs like Slack channel, being like, hey, I heard on this show, link to this show, that we have to do a super crazy update on Monday. Do we use Glog anywhere? Does anybody know? You could sound super smart and also send some other super smart people our way. That'd be really cool. So Lieutenant Data, how's the YouTube research going?
Yeah, so not great. What I learned about our listeners on YouTube is that 54.9% of them are subscribed to our channel.
That sounds good.
When I go to the age and gender tab, it says not enough demographic data to show this report. So no idea.
All right. Isn't 50% really good?
I guess so. We seem to have 164 subscribers.
Ooh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, if you use YouTube...
Oh, no, I'm wrong. We have 366 subscribers.
That's still cool. Well, I guess if you use YouTube Music for your podcast, right, then you would find podcasts there. Cool.
Anyway, thanks for listening on YouTube, if that's you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening in general, everybody. That's all the normal things we have to say. Go click on all the links we told you to and leave a rating and do all the things. Thank you. So, Jonathan, do you write Go tests?
Yes, I do.
Usually when you write your tests, at some point you want to assert that the thing you got from the function is the thing you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you write that?
It depends on what I'm testing. I know where you're going with this because I've looked at the post.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I can just TLDR. I already do the thing he suggests.
So Michael Lynch has a blog post that sort of kicked off a really, really Reddit-ish thread of people like bike shedding about how to write tests. The TLDR of what he's saying is don't use any third-party library for assertions like Testify or Is or any of these libraries. Rather, write if. Like Go has this thing where you have an if, then an expression, then a semicolon, and then the condition, right? The binary condition.
Right.
This creates a scope. So whatever you define in the expression is only for that if. And then you can reuse the variable name. And maybe more importantly, you can't use that variable outside of the scope of the if, right? So what he's saying is do if got want, and then pass the two things you want to assert, right? Semicolon. And then got is not want, right? And then you always use the words got and want all over in your tests. You can copy paste this pattern anywhere, and you just put the actual and expected value and maybe change the t.failedf message inside. And he says it's easy to copy paste and makes the assertions look really different from actual code because this is a pretty weird, like I've never seen if got comma want. Maybe I saw it like once or twice, but definitely not as a pattern. And yeah, just gives a lot of examples in the blog post. The blog post itself, very good. But I don't super love this, how it looks. So I would love to debate this with you.
So the one nitpick I have is I always like my want before my got. And there's two reasons for that. One is I think it's more readable. Using this pattern, if your expression for your got is of inconsistent length, then you have to sort of scan different parts of the line to find what your want actually is. So I like to have the want first for that reason. I think it's visually easier to put that first.
I actually, before you move on, I actually do that as well, but for a totally different reason.
Okay.
It's because when I learned C++, like in 2012, I read the effective C++, and it says always in ifs put the constant on the left because you can accidentally do if A equals 0 and not A equals 0.
Yeah.
So that's sort of got ingrained into my like muscle memory, and I do it in every language, even in Go, where like it can't happen, right?
I also do that just because it feels right, and I never knew why it felt right. But it probably goes back to learning it for those reasons without realizing it. Those are the reasons.
Yeah, this like just cultural DNA of people who started in old language. Anyway, so that's the first reason.
Yeah, the second reason I prefer want first is when I'm using a tool like cmp.diff. I think the diff is easier to read if the expected value is first and the actual value is second, because then I know that pluses are extra or different and minuses are things that are missing. Flipping that around, some people, I guess, maybe like it the other way, but I feel like it's just less intuitive to read a diff where minus means that should not be there.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason.
So the reason I don't like this, and this might be slightly controversial, is I know Go is a simple language and you shouldn't use something that isn't standard library for things. But honestly, Testify is great.
I hate Testify so bad.
Or any Testify-ish library that just gives you assert equal, nil, is error, expect error, like all these, require, and all these sort of testing niceties that are just a very, very simple API that looks really, really good. Is equal, is true, is nowhere, is fail.
I disagree with most of that.
Like, you don't think it looks good? Or
I don't think it looks good. I think it's hard to read. And there's two parts of that. First, the Testify API is inconsistent, and that's what I hate most about Testify. Like, in some cases, the want comes first. Like, it's usually always want is first, but sometimes it's want is second, or some. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I looked at this. So there's a few inconsistencies, and I think the current maintainer has acknowledged that, but won't change it because they don't want to bother with V2, and I respect that. But more important, like if it's the simple ones, like if assert dot equals, that's simple enough. It's easy to understand. But it's also really easy just to write if got equals want. It doesn't really buy any readability. And then when you get to the bigger, longer ones, assert contains like or something like that, then I don't even know what it's doing, and I have to actually go either read the documentation or read the code to understand what it's doing in the first place when I get some weird error. I'd rather just look at Go code. I don't want to have to. I want that assertion directly in my code so I know what's happening. I don't want to have to go read out the code somewhere else. So I've never found a case where I want an assertion library in Go. I often remove it when I'm working on a project where I have that sort of power.
There's a comment here on Reddit that I really liked, where someone said, basically my opinion, right? I don't like this style, as after hundreds of assertions, this starts to get very verbose and repetitive. Is and Go CMP mostly does fine for me. An assertion shouldn't take more than one line, in my opinion. That's Crowdy River on Reddit. That's an okay-ish opinion, right? That's basically what I'm saying. The response here is just so Reddit. It's incredible. Classic double thing. This is my Redditor voice, right? In my imagination, I'm like taking off my fedora, right? Classic double think. Gophers in regular code. The verbosity is worth it because blah, blah, blah. Gophers in test code. We need DSLs that reinvent the language poorly, like Testify. Now, I'm not trying to paint you into the Redditor. It's just the way he phrased it. The person needs to go touch grass for a second.
My response to that would actually be more nuanced. That is, if the tests are too repetitive or difficult to read, then they need to be refactored. Just as normal code that's too repetitive or too difficult to read needs to be refactored. Tests or code, treat them as such. And then I don't think you need the assertion libraries anymore either.
Yeah, the only thing I think you would use is CMP equal for structured data, right? Because you don't want to.
I use CMP diff for structured data usually. Yeah. I also don't understand this. Assertion shouldn't take more than one line. I guess that just they don't like the 3 lines of if x equals y, then t dot fatal. That they feel like that's too many lines.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable thing to say. If I'm going to write 100 tests and each test is going to have 10 assertions in the next year, making it shorter and easier to read, in my opinion, or in this person's opinion, is interesting. I like that. I like the justifications that people come up with in this thread. Like, Google uses this, sort of, going to Google code as authority, maybe. But I'll just say, to sort of round on my opinion, is that yes, Testify is annoying because of the fact that the things are not aligned, right? Sometimes it's got one, sometimes it's one got. That's really annoying. There are others. I think there's is, which is nice. But generally, the style guide is let's not do assertion libraries because it just causes less useful, failure messages, etc., etc. And generally, the Google style guide says that they do not provide useful failure messages in the context, because you have the stack of assert.nil or whatever in the call stack or in the result. So they're basically saying, write your tests, write your assertions yourself. Don't bring in assertion libraries. Sort of sharing your opinion, I guess.
So you made a point about readability, which reminds me of a conversation I had on LinkedIn, of all places, recently about code readability. And you said that you like the shorter assertions for greater readability. Of course, readability is a very subjective concept. If you're fluent with Testify, then many of those assertions will be readable to you. If you're fluent with is or with JUnit or whatever, then you're going to find those certain idioms to be readable. I think that the most readable for most people, which is what the conversation was about on LinkedIn, was that the reason I prefer Go isn't the reason we were talking specifically about the verbosity of error handling in Go on this thread. But I said, I like the verbosity of error handling in Go because it's more readable for more people. It's pretty clear exactly what's going on to anybody who has the basic understanding of any programming language. That's not to say that it's the most readable for everybody. Once you're fluent in Go, then something else like Rust's question mark syntax might be more readable for you, but that's not more readable for everybody. And so I think it's a similar argument here. Certainly, assert.equal or whatever might be more readable for certain people, but it's going to be if you're trying to appeal to the masses, so to speak, or to everybody, the standard library is going to be the most readable, I believe, in the vast majority of cases. And that's not to say that you should try to appeal to everybody. If your team is completely content with Testify or whatever, and you all find it readable, and you're happy to onboard new developers to that standard, of course, that's your choice. So I'm not trying to make a judgment call. I'm just trying to explain my view on that.
Yeah, the author actually responded here and said he understands both perspectives, and it's a close call. So I think that's like the best way to summarize this discussion. Doesn't super matter. Like at the end of the day, there are things in like about test cleanliness that are way, way, way more important. Like how do you set up your data, and do you have shared variables, and like these sorts of things. Is your test flaky? Is 100 times more important than this like new pattern. I think the title is a bit clickbaity, which is why people got angry about it. A simple way to write better Go tests. And then people are like, wait, better than my tests? But yeah, I think like Michael's opinion here is wholly valid. Although I might be lazy and reach to Testify again next time I have to do a thing.
All right.
Cool.
Did we
go
forth
enough and write tests?
I think that's the conclusion, right? Write your tests.
Definitely write them. Don't have AI write them. That would be crazy.
Speaking of AI, I found great success having Copilot rewrite my tests from one framework to another. We had a bunch of tests written in Convey, which I think is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more than an assertion library. It tries to like take over everything about your tests.
It does BDD or something, right?
It's not even that. Like maybe that tries to, but I don't know. It's weird. But I used it. I had been like slowly hammering away at converting Convey tests to standard tests. One day I decided I should see if Copilot can help me with this. I knocked out probably 200 tests in an afternoon. So switched them over. It felt so much better.
Cool. Well, I guess I know what you're answering about using AI in the next survey. Lowering the usage of third-party libraries and subscribing to the standard library.
There we go.
I'm sure they'll like that answer there in the Go team.
I think that's the show.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Program exited. Bye-bye.